You're listening to the Washington State Real Estate Investing Podcast. This episode brought to you by the Easy Home Buyer, serving the Spokane and Coeur d'Alene area. If you're an investor in the greater Spokane area looking to connect with wholesalers, look no further than the Easy Home Buyer. Click on the link in the show notes to be put on their buyer list today, and check out episode 17 with the Easy Home Buyer founder, Chad Young. Welcome back to the Washington State Real Estate Investing Podcast. In today's episode, I chat with Tanya, owner of the staging company Brilliant Staging and Design out of Everett. A great conversation about the psychology behind why you want to stage your home and how staged homes sell faster and for more money. That brings me to today's Investors Highlight, which goes back to some of the information I shared at the REI meetup in Spokane a few weeks back. A thank you and shout out to Kelly Clark, who organized the meetup and also one of the founders of the Coeur d'Alene REI Summit that'll be taking place again this September. You can learn more about that in the show notes below. At the meetup, I shared the idea of when you are starting a business or running a business, part of what you need to understand is not only what parts of the business you like to focus and work on, but also what parts of the business is right to outsource to others. Either because you're not knowledgeable in the area or you just don't like doing it. I use the example that my wife and I don't really like driving around making calls on homes to see if people want to sell. So we outsource that work to our real estate agent. We let him know what we're looking for in another property, what type of property we're looking for, what we want that property to be, and allow him to do his job. It's not that we can't do the work. We just know that it's not our passion and someone else can do it better. Much can be said for staging a home when you want to sell it. According to the National Association of Realtors and Professional Staging, 85% of staged homes sold for 5 to 23% over their list price. 22% of seller agents reported a 1 to 5% increase in sell price for homes that had been staged versus homes that were not staged. Home staging brings in an 8 to 10% return on investment. A staged home spends 73% less time on market than a non-staged home. 81% of home buyers say that a staged home makes it easier for them to see the potential in the home itself. If we find ourselves moving into a market where selling a home might be harder or more homes are hitting the market, finding ways for your house to stand out is key, and staging is one of the best ways to do that. In today's episode, Tanya touches on some of these factors and also the psychology that goes into staging a home and making buyers have that "it just feels good" feeling when they view your house. It's a great conversation about the importance of standing out in a market and why it's important to think about hiring a professional to stage your home for you. So here is Tanya from Brilliant Staging and Design out of Everett, chatting about the power of staging a home. And with that, on with the show. All right, welcome back to the Washington State Real Estate Investing Podcast. I'm so excited to have Tanya here with me today, talking about home staging and the importance of home staging in order to sell a home. Tanya, thank you for joining us today. Let's get started with a little bit of your background. How did you get into the home staging business?
Thanks, Jeff, and thank you for having me here. So my story is a little bit unusual. All of my formal education is in business administration, accounting, management, information systems. So I always knew I was going to own a business at some point. I worked in law enforcement for about 5 years, which,
cool.
a lot of people don't know. And when I had my son, I decided to quit law enforcement. And at the same time, we were selling our home. And I fully renovated our house. We did a lot of work to it. And then I personally staged it myself. To be honest, at the time, I didn't even know a lot about staging, right?
Yeah, right.
The house looked nice.
Right.
And we sold the home so incredibly fast. We had multiple offers the same day it hit the market. We sold way over asking, and we had so much feedback on the staging that everybody was asking, "Who is your stager? It looks amazing." And that's kind of when it clicked for me that this is what I want to do. I've always had a huge passion for design. I've always helped people with project management, renovations,
Very
redoing
cool.
their home, more so as a hobby. And so I started researching home staging. I had all of the business background to kind of go off of, and the rest honestly was not difficult for me,
Yeah.
just to get it going. And it really took off. A lot of amazing feedback and growth. And I joined the Real Estate Stagers Association. I've been doing lots of different courses with them and going to Vegas and things like that. So it's been really fun. I started from a one woman show to now I have an entire crew. We have a warehouse in Everett full of furniture and accessories and everything. So we own all of our own inventory, trucks, vans, movers, stagers,
Wow.
designers. So we have a big operation now, and it's been really fun.
Congrats to you for all this success. And I love the way that, you take your formal education, and someday you knew you're going to run a business, and then you take this passion of design and you come up with something. That's always the best when you can marry those two. What does it look like for you now? Like, how many projects do you usually have going at a time? Even now, we would say we are in a real estate downturn. Are you still staying pretty busy?
So typically we're a lot busier this time of year, that's for
Right.
sure. We've seen a bit of a slowdown, but regardless, I mean, right now I think we have 16 homes staged
Wow.
during like really busy season, which for us and most real estate industries is, spring and summer. We can have around 30 houses staged at a
Wow.
time.
That's fantastic. And how far do you go for people, just if people want to contact you for staging? You're kind of based in South Everett or the Everett area. How far out do you go from there for staging your company?
Yeah, so our service area is going to be all of Snohomish County and then North King County in the east side. So typically we don't travel south of Renton.
Okay.
And then we'll do Issaquah, Sammamish, Kirkland, Bellevue, all of those areas. We've even had people request us to go out on the islands, and we've done some stuff out there just because there's not a lot of stagers over
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. Well, I want to get into it a little bit because I think it's such an important topic, for real estate investors to be thinking out about whether you're flipping a house, or we've even already talked, which I didn't even think about, but want to have you back for another episode talking about staging your Airbnb to get the most out of your money, which is, I think, is going to be a great episode. So people will have to tune in to hear that. That'll be coming up in the future. But today, let's focus a little bit on staging a home to sell. So what are some of the key benefits for staging a home to sell, and does staging actually work? Like, what have you seen, or what are the numbers telling us?
Yeah, those are great questions. That's typically what people want to know, right? Is it worth the investment? So it's kind of a two-part question. One thing I like to explain to people is like what is staging? And a lot of times people assume staging is just throwing stuff in a room so it doesn't look empty.
Right.
But the reality is there's so much more behind it. There's a lot of psychology behind why staging works. Um, and in the end, of course, people want to stage to sell the home faster, make more money, reduce stress on the seller, on the realtor, just let the stager take care of it. But the psychology behind staging talks about that first impression, right? So there is a lot of kind of differing data out there on first impressions, but normally they say you have, about 3 seconds to really wow somebody with the first impression.
Mm.
Um, there's also this really interesting psychological phenomenon that says um, our buying decisions become a lot more complex and the more complex and important the choices, the more likely you are to make that decision subconsciously
Mm.
rather than with your conscious mind,
Oh,
which
wow.
means emotionally we make the bigger the decision, the more likely we are to make it based on our emotions.
Wow.
So buying a home is a pretty big decision. I
Yeah. Right.
Probably the most expensive thing you're ever going to purchase. So besides, looking at it critically, what's wrong with the home, how, all of the numbers, you want to really love it. And
Mm,
that's where the staging comes in. You walk through the door, you want to immediately fall in love, envision yourself living in the space. Also, that perceived value. So, 44% of home buyers spent more money on a home just because they really liked it.
mm,
Not because of extra square footage, not because
yeah.
it's updated, just because they really liked it.
It feels good, right? You hear that all the time. Like it just feels cozy or it just feels good. That's that emotional response I think you're talking about, right?
Exactly. A couple other things to touch on too with the psychology is that natural to-do list that we make in our minds. This is a lot more common with women. Women
Hmm.
walk through a home and we naturally start making a list in our head of the good and the bad, but mostly the bad. So,
Right.
like, oh man, we're going to have to redo this carpet. We're going to have to repaint. And you start making these little ticks in your head. Um, if the home is staged, you naturally distract people from those small details. So you
Mm,
walk in and your eye naturally is going to focus on the pretty things in the room. Oh, I really like that couch. Wow, this
mm,
room feels really cozy. And you're not focusing on the walls or the
right.
baseboards or the floor as much because you're giving the eye something to land on. You walk into a room, it's just absolutely natural anatomy that your eyes start wandering. They need to look at something.
Right.
And if you don't give them something to look at, they will find something in your wall.
Yeah, that's great.
So, yeah, and really focusing on the focal points of the room is another big thing for staging. Making sure that when somebody walks in, you're really selling the view or the beautiful
Mhm.
fireplace or the amazing new floors, and you're really accentuating that instead of focusing on the negatives or really on the furniture. It's not even about the furniture, it's about showing those focal points of the home.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times, I mean, I've noticed it's amazing how much, and this sounds counterintuitive, but it's amazing how much bigger a space seems when there's actually something in the space.
Yes.
There's so many times when I've either been along with people who are buying a home, and if the room's empty, they'll say, "Oh, this isn't that big of a room." But then you go into the same exact room that has a king size bed in it, and people will be like, "This room is huge." It's like it's the same size room,
Yes.
just that there's something there. I think that idea of like you have something to focus your eyes on. Like the room doesn't look that big because there's nothing to really guide your senses. So,
Yeah.
like, when you stage, are you thinking of that as well, of just like, how do we make this room look as big as possible based on the type of furniture we put in it and
Yeah,
the way we decorate it?
absolutely. And that also falls under one of those common mistakes that people make. So oftentimes people think leaving the room empty makes it look bigger, or
Yeah.
putting in really tiny furniture is going to make the room look bigger. But in reality, that's not how it works. People want to see the true functionality of the room. If you put a tiny love seat instead of a full sofa, people automatically think I can only see a
Are
two
gonna
seater
notice
in
that.
here.
Mhm.
So you want to be able to put the right size furniture for the room to really show off that usage of the space. So those are all very important things that we take into consideration.
I love that. Talk about how you approach a new staging project. So let's say, for example, I've got a house I'm going to flip up in, I don't know, Mount Vernon was the last one that we did personally. And we come to you and say, hey, we need some help staging. What does the process look like for me as an investor?
So, our process specifically is we always start with an estimate. Our
Mm,
estimates are very detailed. We go out to the house, we take very detailed measurements of the rooms, we sketch them out, we take photos, videos, and then we get you the estimate for the rooms that you want staged. At that point, you have the option to decide if you want to add anything, remove anything. We then do the contract, we do a deposit, and then we get you booked. When we start planning the staging, there's a lot that goes into it. We actually sketch out the floor plan for every room. So we're
mm,
not just winging it. We want to make sure the perfect size of furniture is coming to the home. We take into consideration the architecture of the home, the age of the home, the colors, the natural and artificial lighting in the space. So we want to make sure that the room feels bright, airy, and cozy all at the same time. So we're going to bring in extra lamps if you don't have a lot of overhead lighting or it's dark in there. Taking all of that into consideration. Also, another very important thing when you're staging, even if you're going to do this yourself, is to take into consideration the photography angles.
Mm-hmm.
So we always look at a room from the point of view of a photographer,
That's a great idea.
because the number one reason, like, thing in marketing is your photos, right? You
Right.
need to lure people into the house. You need to attract them. And if your photos are not good, um, people are just going to skip past your listing and keep
Yeah.
looking. So when we're staging, we make sure, okay, the photographer always takes a picture from this angle. We don't want anything blocking the focal points. So having a huge centerpiece on a table might look beautiful, in theory. But
Yeah.
if you're looking at it from a certain perspective and that's blocking the fireplace or it's blocking the beautiful stove in the kitchen, that's a big no no. So we make sure that everything that's placed in the home is going to accentuate it based on where the photos are going to be taken from.
I really like that. That's not something I would think about going in. Like, okay, where's the photographer going to set up to take this photo, and how do you make that look really good? I love that.
Yeah,
That's such a great
another
tip.
thing also that I mentioned it, but I really want to speak about is the style that you bring into
Mm,
the home. Um, One of my biggest pet peeves is seeing staged homes where it's a beautiful traditional home and people put really modern furniture into
yeah.
it. To me, that's doing a disservice because a lot of people think traditional means outdated, but not necessarily. There's lots of brand new homes that are built with the traditional style because
Hmm.
people love it.
Right.
And so you don't have to try to distract from it being traditional. You want to embrace it. You're selling
Mm,
the home. You want to embrace that it has this gorgeous style. So we make sure that we carry a lot of different styles of furniture. We have traditional, transitional, contemporary, modern, mid century modern, modern farmhouse. I mean, you have to have everything. Otherwise, it will stick out like a sore thumb.
yeah.
Having IKEA looking furniture in a glorious traditional home, like, that's just not gonna work.
Yeah. That's such a great point. I mean, our personal home here is a 1926 brick Tudor. And these brick Tudors, they have a lot of arches. I mean, they're everything's an arched opening. Everything is very rounded. And so all of our furniture at the same time needs to be really rounded. Like the modern straight lines would seem very awkward in this old house that's got funky curves, and because it's just that's the style of the home. And you're right. It so I like what you're saying is you stage for the home, not so much for the buyer. I mean, the buyer is important, but the way the creation of the home has to do with as much of the style of staging than appealing to a particular type of buyer, right?
Yeah, so it goes hand in hand. We will always take into consideration the target audience.
Mm,
So if the home is in a certain neighborhood where you're likely to have, young families, maybe small children, we will take that into consideration with our staging to make sure we show, you know, areas that the kids can hang out, a lot of seating, maybe a good dining area where you can have a family versus there's a lot of areas where you just get young professionals, Microsoft
right.
and such, and that's going to be geared completely different. But at the same time, with the style, you want it to showcase the home.
Right.
Now, for example, we do get a lot of extremely dated homes. It's not necessarily a style, it's just dated.
Right.
Now, with that, yes, you can make the home feel more updated with the staging by bringing in a little bit more contemporary pieces,
Mm,
but you have to know how to blend that properly. So, we'll do a lot of contemporary or transitional type of styles in homes like that. Um, or there's homes that are super dated, but the architecture itself is mid century modern, for example. So, we can bring in newer mid century modern style.
I love that.
So there is a difference between something being outdated and the actual style and the architecture of the home.
Yeah. And I feel I go back to that idea where you said we purchase, especially large purchases, with emotion. And I feel like there's so many times when you walk into a house that's been staged where you have that feeling of like this just feels right. Like there's something that feels right. But there's also you walk through a home and you get done and you're just like, something was off, and you might not even know it. Like you said, like it's a lot of it's subconscious, and it might just be the way that the stage wasn't right, or the furniture didn't fit the space right. And there's nothing you could really kind of put your finger on. You just have this feeling of, man, there's something off about the house. And it might not even be the house itself. It might be the way that it was staged, not using the correct furniture or not having things proportionate that your mind is picking up on, that just doesn't give you that I want to buy this house kind of feel. And that's where I think it is so critical and so important to have a professional stager who knows what they're doing to come in, because my wife and I have been through enough homes now. You can tell the difference between somebody that this is their job, this is what they're doing, versus somebody who thinks they're really good at making a house look clean, right? And having your house look clean is one thing. Having it professionally staged so that it actually stands out is something completely different. Can you maybe talk about or share a story from maybe one of your a recent project? How did it go, and kind of what were the numbers on selling, and where did the staging come in?
Yeah. So we have lots of examples, but a really fun one I like to share. We staged a historic home in Normandy Park. It was actually the very first home that was ever built in Normandy Park
Oh, wow.
in 1929.
Wow.
So, a very cool 4,200 square foot waterfront home, just really funky style, stained glass windows, like the whole
Wow.
thing. Now, this home, they were trying to sell it for almost 3 years.
Wow.
Almost 3 years, on, off, price drop, on, off. Like, they just could not get this home sold. It's like I said, very old. There's
Hmm.
definitely things you'll probably wanna, switch out and
Yeah.
kind of update, but it's amazing. It's an amazing home. So, they ended up switching to a new, realtor who hired us to come in. We staged it, and then the home sold in, I think it was within 3 months
Wow.
after we staged it, and it sold for, I think, 2.5 million.
Wow.
So 3 years versus 3 months, very big difference there. And also you have to keep in mind that the bigger the home, the more expensive the home, the more funky the home, the longer it'll take to sell. So
Sure.
3 months is actually really good on a historic home that's selling over $2 million.
Right. Yeah. That's all cool. And what kind of style did you end up putting in that home? Was it just as funky as the home itself, trying to fit stuff in?
Yeah, so we ended up going with kind of a transitional style in there.
Mm.
We were able to really play off of the stained glass windows and the really cool, like chunky fireplace by bringing in a lot of neutrals. Because of the stained glass and stuff, there's already a lot going on. We didn't want to distract from it. So we did a lot of like neutral tones, kind of keep minimizing some of that. And it turned out really beautiful, just really showcasing the view, that water
Yeah,
view. I
that's
think
great.
it turned out awesome.
Now you said that on that one, the realtor reached out to you. How much of your business is coming through realtors who might have a house that needs to be staged versus a homeowner or someone like myself who invests in properties and is a flipper? Do I reach out to you? Is it better for me to have my agent reach out to you? How do you work? What are the different pathways to get to you to stage a home?
So our main clients is, like you said, realtors, homeowners, and investors. I would say the majority is realtors because
Okay.
they're the ones who deal with us on a daily basis. They're the
Right.
ones that are listing. Oftentimes, investors are preoccupied with actually flipping the home or whatever
Right. Yeah.
they're doing. But we do also have a handful of investors that we work with regularly, not only staging, but their Airbnbs, design work, stuff like that. And so those are really fun because we work with them from start to finish on their projects. Uh,
Very cool.
and so usually the only time we'll have like a homeowner reach out is either they don't like the stager that their realtor presented or their realtor doesn't have a stager. And then
Mm.
the homeowner will reach out to us.
That's great. That's good to know. I love that. If people want to reach out to you, where is the best way for them to be able to do that?
So our website is easy. It's brilliantstaging.com. We have a contact form there, or we have our phone number and email address listed as well. You can always email us hello@brilliantstaging.com. uh, hello at, yeah, realestaging.com. That threw me off
Yeah.
for a second. We're also on Facebook, Instagram. Look us up. We're everywhere. And we're very easy to get a hold of. I have my admin that is on top of us. She answers phone calls and emails all day long. So you can usually get something scheduled pretty quickly if you're needing an estimate or a consultation done.
Awesome. And I will give a shout out for your Instagram account. It's fantastic. I follow it. It's always great to see when you guys upload new pictures of new projects that you're working on and just the different styles. And I think that's something that I love is like you have so many different styles that really do showcase homes. It's not like you just do mid-century modern and you try to shove that into every house possible. Being able to have the warehouse and having the supplies to actually treat homes with respect, I think is such an important part and such a passion of my wife and I when we're doing stuff as well. So we will make sure that your contact information and every way else for people to get a hold of you and to follow you on Facebook and Instagram and everywhere else is in the show notes. Thank you so much for taking time today to talk about the importance of staging and some of the ways that you can stage and a couple quick tips. I do want to have you back, and we've already talked in email about having you come back to focus on Airbnb, because I agree with you. I think that is another great place that we need to be thinking about. And maybe even more important than selling a home these days is the Airbnb market. And again, going back to those photos need to tell the story of, because that is how people are going to do it. So I'm excited that we'll have you back and maybe we'll dig into the idea of staging for Airbnb and some of the tips and tricks around that. So Tanya, thank you so much for being here today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out.
Awesome. Thanks. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I'm always looking for people in any part of the real estate investing arena to have on the show as a guest. If you or someone you know wants to be on the show to talk about what they do and how they support real estate investors or are a real estate investor themselves, you can head over to wsreip.com and click on the contact page to fill out the form to be on the show. Or email me at jeff@wsreip.com and we'll get you scheduled to be on. Thank you for listening, and until next time, we'll see you on the network.